Good morning, everyone. Today on Safe Realty, we are going to talk about vetting. So, on previous episodes, we talked about stranger danger. We talked about, getting ID and like how to figure out who you're going to meet. So, we're going to do a little exercise on how to vet somebody appropriately so that you know who you're going to meet before you meet them. This is good for even like Facebook Marketplace, dating, real estate, your kids' potential like partners. We're not going to be creepy about it, but we're going to be thorough and careful. So, welcome to Safe Realty Podcast with me, Shannon Cutler. I'm on a mission to educate my listeners so that they don't become the next true crime headline. As a former police officer with 18 years of investigative experience and now a real estate agent, I guide realtors on how to handle their own security in vulnerable situations. If you enjoying learning tools to improve your safety, I'm going to ask you to please follow this podcast and leave a review if you would. I'm hoping to think of this show as true crime prevention. So today we're going to talk about vetting. What is vetting? When I was policing, it was just literally black lines, like you see those documents on movies, and it's information that's blacked out with a felt pen. Well, digitally or with an actual black marker, that is what vetting can mean. It is actually a careful and critical examination of something. And so we're not looking to be interrogators of these people that might be our potential clients, but why not learn a little bit about them before you go? So just to bring it back, I mean, I did a talk to my company a few years ago. I think it was, over 30 or 45 minutes, a bit of a Zoom getting, I think there were a couple hundred agents that attended, just talking about realtor safety, things that we can do, this whole podcast condensed into 1 hour. So one of the agents, a little female agent, I shouldn't say little female agent, young and new, she called me the day after the Zoom meeting. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I attended that meeting with you yesterday. Thank you so much. This is what happened after that meeting." And the same day or the day after, I can't remember the exact timeline, she received a call from a male who needed to sell his house. So he said, "Hey, can you come over to check out my house?" It was in the Lower Mainland, the Vancouver area. "Can you come over and check out my house and let me know what you think I need to sell it?" I don't know how many real estate agents are in Vancouver. I'll say a couple thousand minimum. There's probably more in the whole Lower Main area. There's tons. So she's young, she's attractive, she may be very qualified. It's nothing to do with that at all. But there are also lots of other qualified people out there that are not, whom are not young and female and attractive. So I am going to say that, and it is important part of why when you hear the rest of the story. So this girl, this agent, she took the few minutes to do what we're going to talk about today to vet her client, to the prospective client. She took a few minutes to look this guy up and see who he was before she just went into a stranger's house, isolated with just him. And that's what we do on a daily basis. Oftentimes, it is completely fine and completely safe. But there are occasions, news headlines say it every day, where it has not been okay and not been safe. And this is one of those occasions. She spent 5 minutes online looking this guy up. We're going to go through some of the ways to do that and found out that this fellow had been recently released from federal prison, for murdering his ex-girlfriend. I'm going to let that sit with you for a second. He was just released from prison. He was on parole for murdering his ex-girlfriend. Now, I had a few thoughts for her just as I hear this audible gasp from there, and every time I tell this story, there is an audible gasp from the people I'm speaking to. This girl, this agent, this real estate agent in British Columbia, did all the right things. And when she called me, she said, "This is what I learned." And I said, "Okay, here's your choices. Your choice number one, which most people would do and wouldn't blame you for, is to say, never, not even contact this fellow, or to say, sorry, my client, this is full. I'm unable to take you on. Number two, you could refer this person to another agent or work with another really experienced agent, male or female, it doesn't matter. But having a partner whom is with you all the time. Now, I did say to her, if this fellow was just released from prison, he's done some time, he probably actually needs to sell his house because he's been in jail and he's broke and he needs the money for whatever reason. And he may actually legitimately need to sell his house. Now, you can make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to provide the services to him and how you want to do it with somebody else referring out. You name the things. So she did that. She referred it out to a male agent with a lot of experience and just didn't even want to be involved in it at all. It scared her so much, but it was I'm glad it scared her. It's like, when you do something dumb as a teenager and something bad almost happens, or it happens to somebody else or around you, and you think, "Oh my God, I'm not going to do that again. Or I don't want to be part of that kind of situation again. I got really lucky." That was one of those times where it scared her so that she thought, "Okay, this is not something that I want to be involved in. This fellow might need a realtor, but he can call Stan, the fellow that's been in since the 80s, who has a ton of experience, and he can do just as good of or better of a job, maybe better because she was brand new. Not saying she couldn't have done a great job, but this fellow um, can go and meet with this guy." And you know what? If the prospective client, if the guy that was just out on parole said, no, I don't want you as my agent, okay, then we can just like sound the alarms and all the red flags are going off, because if he only wants a female agent, then, that's the problem right there. Because, I mean, just red flags everywhere around the town. So, how do we do what this agent did, this female agent who avoided walking in to a male's house in an isolated location? And I mean isolated is in a house with closed and locked doors and windows, because most people don't see who is going in and out of a house all day long. They don't pay attention. And so this person, this female agent, would have been in the house with locked doors with a person who had just been released from jail for murdering his ex-girlfriend. And she may have just gone there and not notified anybody, just to do her job. So let's do what she did. Let's learn from this, and let's learn how to get into the same situation as her and not get into danger. So when we talk about vetting, the most obvious thing that, most of us do, Google somebody, we just type their name into Google, whatever platform you use, and search them up. See what you can come up with. You'll find their LinkedIn's, their Facebook, their Instagram, news headlines, any of that stuff. I get lots of generic names that are total bullshit scammers, like John Smith or Roger, I don't know, like a name that somebody would use all the time, or, like Clint Black, like that's also a country singer, but also a very generic name. So sometimes it's too hard to figure out who these people are. But if you don't have anything else to go on, we're going to take this step by step. Let's start with an online search, open source search. We go on, we can open their Facebook and see, oh, okay, well, we actually know two of the same people. That's interesting. Okay, well, that provides me some legitimacy to that person. Or, oh, they created their Facebook account yesterday. Okay, that's a bit of a red flag. I'll write that one down. Um, let's check their LinkedIn profile and see what they're doing on there. Not everybody is on LinkedIn, But if the person is calling and saying that they're an investment person or this and that, they may have a LinkedIn profile. Again, just because they don't doesn't mean anything, but it is a good place to have a look and see their interactions with other people. So we do Instagram, depending on your age or demographic, where you are. I'm not on TikTok. Lots of people are. So you can check there any of the places that that you visit. It doesn't hurt to have a quick peek. I mean, anybody who's going to hire you or meet you or date you or whatever is also doing this. So, just take a few minutes to get a picture of them. So I check Facebook, I check Instagram, I check LinkedIn. If there's a news article, which may or may not be a red flag. I recently sold a house. I listed a house, and the buyer was giving us some really strange requests and was just being a little cagey through their agent. So I looked up the person and I found some really crazy news articles about violence and a bunch of stuff. And not saying that that person doesn't then need to buy a house. It's not to discriminate, but then I went down the rabbit hole a little further into some of these other things we're going to get into next and found out that they were potentially running from something and needed a place to stay safe. And so then I was like, oh my goodness, okay, all of this other stuff now makes sense to me. But now I have a clear picture of what's going on. So we can check business pages, verify a little bit of information. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars being spent on a real estate transaction. So we can identify somebody and do a proper job of figuring out, what the status is. So there are online search capabilities all around the world to look up criminal records, active court cases, that kind of thing. In British Columbia, we have CSO Home, and we can actually look up somebody's name on there and find out if they have traffic tickets, if they have a criminal record that's not been, you know, kept out, like say juvenile or there was a protection order on the case. Otherwise, we can find out that kind of information. We can go to canlii, canlii.org. I'll put that in I'll put all these things in the show notes so that you have access to some of these things. You can see how they work. Canlii, our Canadian Legal Institute, actual cases from around the entire country. You can actually, they're searchable. It's a little bit of an archaic system. However, it can provide some really great information should you want to look a little further. This CSO and canlii.org is what helped that female agent figure out that male had just been released for murdering his ex-girlfriend. She was doing, again, a 10-minute search, 5 to 10 minutes. This does not need to be an all-day project for you. There is criminalrecords.com in the United States. You may have to create an account, may have to pay a bit of a fee, but if you are a real estate agent, all these things are right. You write them off as a business expense. You're doing it for that purpose. In the UK, there's gov.uk online. It's also UK criminal records. The abilities are endless to look people up across the globe. So wherever you are, definitely go online and put state of Texas criminal records. Just bear in mind that some things are federal, not state-wise. In Canada, there are some things that are provincial versus federal. Likely the same with a lot of places around the world. But wherever you are, if you're in Spain, look up, Spanish or criminal records in Spain, criminal records in Ireland, those types of things. There's even a CPIC online in Canada. CPIC stands for Canadian Police Information Center. As police officers, if you were to pull somebody over and run their license plate, run their ID, see if they have a criminal record, any conditions, that's the system you use. However, the public can access CPIC online in a different manner. If you were watching the news and you saw like this car was stolen, or there's an Amber Alert, keep an eye out. You can actually go to CPIC online and as an open source and query things and say, yes, that car is stolen. There are some things that can be accessible to the public without waiting for freedom of information. So these are quick quick things. Now, when we're trying to form a full picture of somebody, doing these open source online queries is really great. But what is even more important, I mean, that takes 5 or 10 minutes, but the next step is to have a conversation with these people. I know some agents in my area who will do this, and they'll be texting with a person that's reached out to them through an online lead generation source or realtor.ca or a referral, and they are just having text conversations or email conversations with these people and never actually having a conversation. And it's a bit of a red flag if somebody won't have a phone call with you or a Zoom or a WhatsApp, FaceTime, any of these things. I mean, we have to identify people with actual physically seeing them. It's the law in our area. Before they enter into a real estate transaction, we can't just take their word for it, which is for obvious reasons. So, next step is to have a meeting. If you can't meet at your office, a coffee shop, a restaurant, a park bench, Zoom, FaceTime, all these platforms, have a quick meeting with them. Lay eyes on them. It's nice to meet you. I always like to take a few minutes to speak with my clients before, entering or getting to the next step of the real estate process, finding out how I can work for you the best, like in the best way possible. What can I do to help you achieve, what you're trying to do, achieve your real estate goals. So you can tell a lot by when you meet with somebody. Anyone who refuses to meet with you, provide their name, or to have some kind of meet, virtual or otherwise. Phone call is not the ideal, but it's better than nothing. Anybody who refuses to do this, provide this information, let's not stop right there. I'm sorry if you're not going to provide any information or meet with me. I can't continue working for you. There's lots of great agents out there. Good luck to you. Huge red flag. There's no reason why somebody wouldn't provide you with their name when they're looking at entering into a private residence or having you come into their private residence for the potential of listing a with these types of dollars. I mean, in our area, very few things are under four, five, $600,000. It's why would anybody want to spend? It doesn't matter what the value is, because it's all relative to the demographic and the socioeconomic demographic of an area. So to one person, $1 million means a lot. To another person, $10,000 means a lot. If somebody is entering into a transaction at their level and they won't provide you information about who they are, they're not actual legitimate clients. They're not there to do business. They're either going to waste your time, they're criminals, or they're playing some kind of scam. So let's just avoid that altogether. Okay. So next thing, we are moving on. So when we have this meeting with people, we want to ask a few questions. Again, this is not an interrogation, but how am I supposed to do my job properly as a realtor without asking a few questions? Like, not only like, what do you want in a house, or what's the most important thing you think about your house when you're selling your house, but legitimate things like, why do you want to work with me? Reached out to me on my website. What is it about me that makes you want to work with me? And entering into a real conversation, I've only ever had one person balk at that question, and everybody else has been like, "Oh my God, I read your blog," or I saw that you used to be policing, and my dad was a police officer, so I want to use somebody if like they have legitimate things, or you had the most Google reviews and I thought that was really good. I read your testimonials. Those are all legitimate answers. Provide you with some security that these people are out there to actually um, be safe clients for you. So asking about, what's important for you in a neighborhood, what's important for you in a home, what do you love most about your neighborhood, what do you love most about your home, what traits do you look for in a realtor? Is it important for you for the realtor to work, after 7? I don't work at night unless I'm in a contract with somebody or there's an absolute emergency. That's my time with my family and for myself. I don't work at night. So if somebody was like, I want you 24/7, I'm probably not the right agent for them, and that's okay. But that also to me is a bit of a red flag when somebody wants you 24/7. Just saying. Okay. So a little story. I told a story about that female realtor who um, found out the guy was going just been sorry had just been released and was on parole. Now, a few things to keep in mind when we're asking questions. Again, it's all about communicating in a professional way, and most people that I deal with in real estate are. But there's an interesting story about this police agent that I met, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, which makes me feel like 170 years old. But I was on a course, and this fellow had been a police agent, which means he was a non-police officer, but did undercover work for police agencies because he was involved in crime. And this fellow was a drug smuggler. He would bring in, at that time, marijuana was this big organized crime commodity. He would be bringing bales of marijuana across the Canadian-US border on a weekly basis. I want to say I don't know how many pounds a week, but what he would do is he'd bring an SUV through. He'd have two kayaks on his roof, and in the kayaks they'd be full of marijuana. He would be dressed in Mountain Equipment Co-op, Arc'teryx, fancy North Face stuff, all the gear. He looked the part, and he would drive back and forth through the border because of that area was really great kayaking. And he would just be like kayaking, non-assuming fellow. The Border Patrol on the Canadian and US side didn't ask him any questions about kayaking, about his cover story, about his backstory. They didn't ask him anything. And he said, not one time did anybody ask me questions about kayaking, about tide charts, about where I was going, about backcountry, about anything about kayaking specifically. They might say, "Where are you going kayaking?" And he'd say, "Oh, Howe Sound or Desolation Sound or Broken Island Group or wherever around Seattle." And very generic. And they would stop the questioning at that and let him go through. And he would be bringing millions of dollars of marijuana through the border every week. And all he had to, somebody had to do is ask him about like a tide chart or, something technical about kayaking. And he would have been like, and not been able to answer, but unable to fulfill, what, like his backstory. He would have been busted and the gig would have been up. But nobody bothered to do that. Nobody asked him a couple questions about the thing. And that has stuck with me and will stick with me forever. I tell that story over and over and over because it just speaks to the fact that taking just a few minutes out of our time to do just a little bit can get you a long ways. And so this guy did this for years and years and years. I want to say he was like a drug smuggler for like 15 or 20 years, bajillions and bajillions of dollars going back and forth through him because no one bothered to ask him a few questions. Nowadays, we also have the ability, okay, I don't know anything about maybe tide charts. This guy's coming through. I could now look up a couple, like go on Google and say like a couple questions to ask about kayaking or, you know, three technical things about kayaking and ask this fellow because I'd have like that at my fingertips. Maybe they didn't have that information back then or the same access to the internet. However, I'm sure somebody at the border could have. And seeing this guy come back and forth so many times. Anyways, that's my thing. So ask her just a couple questions and you'll get a feel for somebody by how they engage with you. If they're cagey, if they're forthcoming, you can tell them why you're asking. You can just ask, I need you to provide identification. I mentioned this on a previous episode. Provide ID for me. I need to know who you are because you're entering into a private residence because I want to ensure my safety is secure. I want to ensure that I'm secure. You need to feel secure with me as well. And most people that you explain that to will say, don't, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. I never even thought of that. I had a couple nurses who worked home care. They're like, oh my God, I've had to go in the craziest places. Of course, I should have thought of that. Yes, here's my information. This is who I am. This is the situation. You're not doing it for solicitation so you can show up and knock on their door and give them pamphlets. It's not 1982. It's just for safety and security. And anybody who won't provide you with that, like I can't say it enough, do not continue to work with them. there is a lady on the island, Vancouver Island, who has been doing that. And it took like a dozen agents, and people were calling me from all over the island, like, why won't this woman provide? And it was identification and sort out. And it was ended up being a cultural thing. Um, and English was not her first language. It was not, it was communication breakdown and a cultural thing. And eventually it was sorted out, but it gave everybody across the island these huge red flags for a while because she wouldn't even be bothered to have a conversation with them outside of an email or an online submission. So you never know the reason. It's not always a nefarious reason why somebody's not giving you identification or providing that. But let's just take a few minutes to make us feel a little safer and a bit more secure when we're entering into something. So I think that that's, a good run through of vetting. There are always more things that you can do, but we don't need to make this an arduous, long process. We just need to take a name, have a quick conversation, preferably in person, but at least virtually. Ask a couple questions about their intentions, about their thoughts on you as an agent working for them and if it's a good fit. And, searching a couple things on their profile. Maybe if you saw on somebody's profile that they were involved in a protest group of something that you are really, really against and they're very vocal, they just want to talk about this the whole time. Maybe that's not the right person for you. Maybe you're not necessarily unsafe, but you just have realized this is probably not a good fit. I've met people like that that just weren't a good fit for me as a client, or perhaps it was me that wasn't a good fit for them as an agent. And it can save you a lot of time and energy just in general, outside of even keeping yourself safe. But it's just a matter of, if it's legitimate business, this is what I say to all my students. If it's legitimate business, it will be there. If it's illegitimate, you don't want it anyways. So taking this 5 or 10 minutes out of your day and then a phone conversation or a virtual meeting is going to go a long ways and it shows your professionalism. It shows that you're not just like, oh yeah, I'll take whatever I can get. Doesn't matter whether it's this or whether it's that. I don't care. But you have value. Your time is valuable. Your personal safety has value. It speaks a lot to the way you do business as well, taking this extra few minutes. So I think that covers it for today. I would love to hear what you think about vetting and if you have any tips um, or suggestions about this topic. I would love to hear it. Or if you have a story, please share it. Reach out to me via email or social media. Your experience could help keep somebody else safer, and it might even be featured on an upcoming episode. Links are below to everything in the show notes. Please leave a rating and review so that others like you can help me find the podcast, learn ways to keep themselves safer. And if you've learned anything on today's episodes, please recommend this show. Be safe, everyone, and I'll see you soon.